Hello and welcome to Reading Aloud, the programme full of inspirational ideas on books for the classroom and a lot more besides. Now, when we called this programme Reading Aloud, we knew we'd come up with a clever title. And we had that immediately confirmed when the Children's Laureate, Jacqueline Wilson, launched a campaign to reinstate reading aloud at home and at school. Later, we're going to see how she's getting on. Also in this week's show, Radio Days. Pupils relive wartime Britain as they read Goodnight Mr. Tom. Is a poetry renaissance underway?
I want to hear poetry that's a reflection of the mirrored minds of its creator.
We hear from our own slam poet. And what do Jacqueline Wilson's fingers have in common with a bag of sugar? But first, a book that sparked off some really creative work in the classroom. It's Goodnight Mr. Tom by Michel Magorian. It was famously dramatised for TV with John Thor playing the kind but gruff old man. Mr. Tom takes Willie in, an abused boy evacuated to the English countryside during the Second World War. After being beaten, Willie fears all adults, even warm-hearted Tom, as he rakes the fire.
He knew that Tom was speaking to him, but he couldn't take his eyes off the poker. It sent hot coke tumbling in all directions. He saw Tom's brown, wrinkled hand lifted out of the fire. The tip was red, almost white in places. He was certain that he was going to be branded with it. And then the floor came towards him, and it all went dark.
Welcome to all you listeners out there. You are listening to We're World Radio, where in the next hour you will hear the latest tune.
The pupils at Windcliffe Primary School have brought Willie's story to life, evoking the period with a wartime radio show.
Today we have two guests in the studio who will be revealing to us how war has affected them.
It links very, very well with our history topic, Britain since 1930s, so allowing them to explore the issues of evacuation and the different experiences.
And even now I remember how fast my heart was beating. I was petrified.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Willie. Your story will certainly restore faith in all our listeners.
Tom didn't make any comment. He gazed at Sammy, who was slumped miserably over his feet. Willie looked up and noticed that Tom was holding a letter. "What's the matter?" "It's from your mother," he said, indicating the paper.
Satnam uses the letter to introduce an activity called Conscience Alley.
Well, it's a form of drama, and the alleyway actually acted as two sides of the fence, representing the dilemma and the conflicting thoughts Willie is faced by, so it's a crucial point in the story.
I'm confused, my mind's running wild. Should I stay with Tom, the man who has given me many happy memories and showed me life can be good? But on the other hand, there is my mother, and she always will be my mother.
After everything your mum has done for you, she's asking you for one thing, to come back.
So one side would actually give him the reasons for why he should go home, and the other side of the fence, the reasons why he should stay with Tom.
Tom has given me exactly what I need, like a true love between a son and a father.
So it was really asking the pupils to consider the advantages and disadvantages of Willie going back home.
Maybe she's changed, or maybe she'll hit me with a belt and will give me colourful bruises. What if she hasn't changed?
Now tell me, did you use different methods of communication for the children to use themselves?
To the lead-up of the Conscience Alley, we used talk partners, which I thought allowed children to rehearse their ideas and with their partners think of both sides of the dilemma and then formulate their own opinion before deciding which side of the alleyway they were on.
I think Willie's feeling confused.
Yeah, he must be very sad.
Children were inspired by the book, I think, because it related so much within the history that they were studying, that aided their understanding, but also it allowed for many opportunities for them to empathise, and that really got them involved within the story and the events.
Now for a writer who wears more rings on her fingers than anyone else I know, Jacqueline Wilson. When this prolific author was first appointed Children's Laureate, she declared that her biggest mission was to encourage more reading aloud. Well, we went along to the Young Readers Festival in Birmingham to see how she's getting on. It's easy to spot a Jacqueline Wilson event. Just look for the army of adoring fans.
I like the way she relates her stories to actual children.
I think they're funny and I like them.
They're not too far away from reality.
She's living proof that reading can be cool and not boring. A message she's been determined to hammer home ever since becoming Children's Laureate.
The joy of being the laureate is that you can play to your strengths and do whatever you feel will be best to promote the whole world of children's literature. And so I am very, very keen on the idea of getting mums, dads, carers, grannies, uncles, teachers reading aloud to children. So I've been banging my drum and hoping lots and lots of people discover the joys of sharing stories.
All well and good, but these are serious fans. They wanted to know important things like, how heavy are those rings?
They weigh over £2. When you think of a £2 bag of sugar, aren't I mad going around with all this weight on my arms? So I think when you read aloud a book, there's all sorts of different things that happen when you're sharing the story. Both of you can participate. You can ham up the exciting bits. You can both crack up laughing at a funny bit. And it's just a wonderful way of enjoying a story together.
Jacqueline wrote her first novel when she was 9. Her readers, many budding authors themselves, wanted to know the secret of her success.
There's no kind of magic way or knowing people or doing the right thing. It's pure luck. Your children only are young for such a short space of time, and I think reading aloud to them, carrying on up until they're about 11 and then can slope off and do whatever they want themselves, I think that's the best thing you can do for your child.
Well, of course, I'm absolutely with Jacqueline Wilson on that, but then me and her, we have this strange, weird idea. It's called reading for fun. Now, how does that work? Well, each and every one of us try to work out ways in which we can make reading in school, in classrooms, fun. But it also means banning anything that makes reading boring, anything at all. You could start by reading to the children at a time when they know that you can't ask them any questions, like at the very end of the day or during wet play. You could copy out any poem that you liked onto a great big piece of paper and then pin it up on the wall and leave it there for a week and just see what happens. And then a week later, take it off and put up another one. Run a make-your-own picture book competition. Get a local artist in to help. The parents and teachers get together and run a school bookshop. And then, why not put on a show together based on one of the books for all the children to enjoy? Well, what's all this for? Well, I think we have a mission. That's to make children into readers. But that shouldn't just be about making children into people who can read. We should be making children into people who want to read.
I'm going to do my level best to carry on for the next year whilst I'm the laureate and people actually have to listen to me, trying to show that reading aloud is a wonderful thing.
The amazingly popular Jacqueline Wilson. If only poetry could be as popular. Well, some believe it's going to be. Writer Ruth Padell believes that there's a poetry renaissance underway, particularly in schools. With this in mind, our panel have been looking at Ruth Padell's book, 52 Ways of Looking at a Poem, subtitled A Poem for Every Week of the Year. It's a collection of contemporary poems and analysis, first published weekly in a newspaper column. Stacey, 52 Ways of Looking at a Poem. Is the book what you expected from the title?
I don't think it is. I think it's one way of looking at 52 poems. I think she looks at the poetry in a very formulaic way. So in terms of structure and in terms of language, it is quite a usable document in terms of how to approach a poem if you're not experienced at that. But in actual appreciating the poetry, I'm not actually sure she manages it.
So, Richard, you're a performance poet. Did this appeal to you, this analytic, slowly musing and thinking about a poem in the way that Ruth Bedell does?
Not really. I'm from live literature, which isn't really entrenched in the written form. To be honest with you, this is probably one of the better books, talking about how to kind of look at poetry. But for me, yeah, it's probably been more 52 ways of listening to a poem or watching a poem rather than reading it.
Julia, do you read much poetry? Are you a poetry reader?
Not a great deal, and I found it a very... I completely agree with Stacey. I think it's absolutely right that it isn't 52 ways of looking at a poem. And in fact, in the introduction, Ruth Bedell really explains that that isn't what she's doing. She's telling us the tools that you need, as it were, what it takes to make a poem. And so she then uses them as she looks at the poems that she goes through. But I loved being taken by the hand and taken through those poems.
Any poems in particular that grabbed you?
Well, I think that there are a lot of poems within the book that are worthy of being read or being listened to, but I think because I was reading it as a complete text alongside her analysis, it sort of lost something for me because I lost my initial response almost, because I was reading her analysis alongside it.
I think part of the problem was the idea was that you did one a week in a Sunday paper, and I think probably if you'd come across it and if you'd come across it every Sunday, you would have thought, oh, good, I'm just going to think about that poem. But you don't want to read through it. It's the kind of book it's nice to have by the bed and pick up a poem and look at, but you don't really want to go through one poem after another.
Richard, I wonder for you, do you feel in a way that the world of poetry that you're coming from is somehow utterly excluded from this book?
I think so. I think there's various different ways of digesting poetry. Watching poetry on a DVD, listening to poetry through a CD, reading mobile phone text poems, as well as books. I think this is a very academic book. It seems to be aimed at teachers to stimulate ideas around poetry and how to look at poetry differently, so on and so forth.
Do you think this is a book that you, as a teacher working with secondary school students right up to what we used to call the sixth form, useful book in that respect?
I think it would be useful for A-level students who are struggling to access poetry or struggling to come up with the technical ability in terms of analysing. In terms of forming their own opinions, no, it wouldn't be any use at all, but it would equip them with the confidence, I suppose, to actually tackle the language and the structure of poetry.
Well, to finish, perhaps, Richard, you could give us a little flavour of your poetry. Perhaps it could be the 53rd way to approach a poem.
53rd way. OK, cool. I want to hear poetry. I want to hear poetry that transcends tongue and dialect, that tears at the ivory tower of intellect, that shrouds itself with words unspoken, broken, dissected and then reread, never said as they were once thought, taught to recite parrot fashion to classrooms of unengaged generations. I want to hear poetry that's a reflection of the mirrored minds of its creator, poetry that will relate you to the words fluttering ear-bound, ground up in the esophagus, digested through the diaphragm. I want to hear poetry that can slam doors shut and open galleries of new ones. Poetry before breakfast. Poetry with no shoes on. That's the sort of poetry I want to hear.
Well, that's about it for this edition of Reading Aloud. Final thought on poetry. I've been doing some research in this fairly sizable bookstore, and I've discovered that poetry titles occupy just 1% of total shelving space. So perhaps that poetry renaissance has got a bit of a way to go. Bye.